It did not come easy for Patchy Mix in Paris, France on Friday night, Bellator Paris, but he did come out still the bantamweight champion of the world for Bellator. We will break down that fight and all of the other big performances from the night right here, right now, and give my thoughts on if I really thought Patchy Mix did defend his title or if Magomed Magomedov potentially got robbed. I don't like throwing around the R word. A lot of people were, though, on Friday night. So let's discuss that fight and if we may just see a trilogy down the line. First and foremost, this fight right here shows how high level 135 pounds is across the board, regardless of promotion right now in mixed martial arts. Bantamweight is one of, if not the best divisions in the world, in the sport right now. The only one that rivals it, in my opinion, is 155-pound lightweight division. Patchy Mix, the current bantamweight champion, the Grand Prix winner, has been on an absolute tear, winning 6 straight fights, 5 of those via finish, and he's been on an absolute roll. He has already finished his opponent that he faced Friday night, Magomed Magomedov, and finished him via submission. But this fight was very, very different and nowhere near as one-sided as some may say, and even myself, that Magomed Magomedov should have won this fight. Now, this was razor close, very competitive, toe to toe for 25 straight minutes. One of the higher level MMA fights of 2024 thus far. Therefore, I will not say that this was a robbery. The robbery word gets thrown around way too much in today's MMA show. That is a very harsh word, the R word. You got to be careful throwing that around with some of these fights. This was not that. This was a fight that was a split decision. 2 judges saw it for Mix. 1 judge saw it for Magomedov. Had it been 2 judges for Magomedov and 1 for Mix, you wouldn't hear me complaining either because that would have been a rightful decision as well. And the one that I think should have been awarded here. Now, I'm not going to necessarily go round by round and break down what specific rounds I think belong to Magomedov and which ones belong to Mix, but I will say that throughout this fight, the bigger moments time and time again belonged to Magomed Magomedov. He landed the more impactful blows on the feet, had Patchy Mix hurt numerous times in this fight. The counter argument to that is Patchy Mix had Magomed Magomedov on the fence 2 separate occasions with very, very tight submission attempts that nearly had the fight finished, similar to how the first fight ended when Patchy Mix submitted Magomed Magomedov. And outside of those big moments that both fighters had, when the fight was standing, it was all Magomed. Patchy did well. He competed on the feet, but I just felt game plan wise, he did not implement his high level elite grappling and wrestling as much as he maybe should have. And maybe that's because he wasn't expecting Magomed to want to keep this fight standing as much as he did. But I feel that from the opening bell, once Magomed knew that he had the upper hand, the speed advantage, the power advantage on the feet, he had no interest in going to the grappling realm, especially when you consider he did get submitted in the first fight. He made the proper adjustments coming into this rematch better than what Mix had made coming into this fight. Mix started to implement more of the grappling in the late rounds 4 and 5, but still didn't have a ton of success with offensively getting Magomed to the ground, keeping him on the ground, getting ground and pound, using transitions and sequences to control time on the mat. That just was not the case. Instead, it turned into him looking for takedowns and as a result, holding Magomed against the fence and racking up control time, those latter portions of the fight. That is apparently what swayed the judges to score those later rounds for Patchy Mix. I'm looking at the scorecards here, and I will flash those on the screen for you as well. 1 judge had 4 and 5, both for Patchy Mix, hence toward what I was just discussing with those later rounds and the control time against the cage. And then 2 of the judges only gave Mix round number 5. However, the deciding scorecard came from Mark Collette because he gave rounds 2 and 3 to Patchy Mix, whereas the other 2 judges did not give either of those rounds to Patchy Mix, and that was the deciding factor. We have 2 48-47s for Mix and one judge, David Peabody, scored it 49-46 for Magomed Magomedov. The only round he scored for mixed was the fifth and final round of the fight. So when scorecards are like this all over the place, it shows how closely contested this fight was and how any minute moment in a fight can be the deciding factor. So Mix remains the Bellator champion. He is on a 7-fight win streak, newly engaged to undefeated UFC strawweight fighter Tatiana Suarez. The power couple, the best power couple in mixed martial arts right now, reigns supreme. Now I just hope that Tatiana will get her title shot soon in the UFC, but that's a discussion for another day. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of this fight from a fan perspective in terms of the action that we got to see in the cage. It's hard pressed to find a more high level fight for 25 minutes that has happened so far in 2024. This one is definitely up there and showed how elite both of these fighters are. Two guys that can compete in the UFC bantamweight division easily, in my opinion. Not easily get victories, but they can easily fit into that current top 15. So I loved this fight. I think it was very high level. Yes, Patchy Mix is 2-0 in the series, but the way that this one went, I could see a trilogy, a potential third bout happening down the line. But the night belonged to Mix. He is the champion. Magomed Magomedov is still a contender and a player in the Bellator bantamweight division. There's not really rankings right now because they were merged together with the PFL. Neither guy can compete with PFL fighters because the PFL does not have a bantamweight division in their season format. So it's interesting to see what will be next. Mix already had a name on the mind and called out. I believe it was. Sorry, I had a hiccup there and couldn't think off the top of my head. He called out Leandro Higo, who is 23-6. He's coming off of a big victory and was the backup fighter for this fight and made weight for that fight. So it seems that we may know who Mix's next opponent is. We do not know who Magomed's next opponent is. So give me all your thoughts on what could be next for both these guys and who you scored the fight for in the comments below. And now that we are done discussing the Bellator Paris main event, let's jump into the rest of the card. Not going to be a ton to discuss here, but the night belonged to Cedric Doumbe from France, and he put on a show for his home crowd. They were electric during his entrance and during his fight and during his finish, his first round TKO over the veteran Jaleel Willis. The former Glory Kickboxing World Champion Cedric Doumbe is now 6-1 as a professional mixed martial artist. The only loss came in March of this year, just 2 months ago, when he had that weird TKO due to a toe injury. It seemed that maybe even a miscommunication had occurred between him and Mark Goddard, but I digress. A loss is a loss, unfortunately, but he bounced back in a big way. He got a finish in 3 minutes and 33 seconds. All 6 of his victories are by knockout. The 31-year-old is right in his prime and is a fantastic stand-up fighter. And his next fight is against the Wheaties box guy, the former lightweight champion in the UFC turned PFL competitor, Anthony Showtime Pettis was there in attendance, came into the cage. They faced off. They had their microphone moments. Anthony Pettis wants to face Cedric in Paris, France. Cedric Doumbe said that is a terrible decision and mistake for him to make. Had the crowd going bananas. I'm telling you, Cedric Doumbe has the Paris, France crowd in the palm of his hand. If he's fighting for Bellator and or the PFL, they are going to try and keep him there for as many fights as possible because he will draw eyeballs to the card and he will put asses in the seats. This guy is electric. I look forward to seeing how he will compete in the future, and especially against someone, and yes, Anthony Pettis may be getting older, is not in his prime anymore, but this is a guy who has been there and done that, faced some of the best fighters in the world for over a decade now at this point, a UFC champion. If Cedric can beat him and knock him out, oh my goodness, this is a massive, massive star that does not belong to the UFC, but belongs to the Bellator, well, and kind of the PFL. And there's no big takeaways on the rest of the card, to be quite honest with you. All of the big favorites quite literally won on this fight card. Patchy Mix, Cedric Doumbe, Costello Van Steenis, Archie Colgan, Slim Trabelsi, I probably butchered that name, and Mansour Barnaoui. All of those 6 fighters were huge favorites coming into this card, and they all got victories. Am I dumb for not doing the Bellator heavy favorites parlay? Yes, because it would have hit, and it was only 6 legs, which isn't that crazy. I've seen worse where you have to put like 10 or 12 on some of these Bellator cards with some of the betting lines. And Aspen Ladd did get a victory as well. I had to give her a quick shout out. I've been a advocate of her on this show in the past. I've had my moments where I kind of stopped believing in her. She got a victory here, a much needed one at that, in the second fight of the night. So Bellator Paris, all in all, was a pretty solid card, a variety of good finishes. The heavy favorites did what they were supposed to do. Controversial ending to the main event potentially, and everything in between. So be sure to let me know all of your thoughts on this card and the Bellator Champion Series event in the comments below. If you enjoyed this recap, please be sure to drop a like on this video and subscribe to the channel if you are new so you never miss when I recap the most meaningful results from every card every week. I also preview the best fights and give my opinions on the biggest storylines heading into each card, and I give my thoughts and opinions on MMA news and fight announcements. Join the community on social media at the BAJ MMA, and follow the show on your favorite audio platform. If you like one long form podcast episode, you can hear those every Friday and Monday on Spotify, Apple, and many more. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next video.